Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, my friends, we're talking about LinkedIn. No, not that LinkedIn where it's all spammy and disgusting and people are connecting and spamming you. There's all kinds of garbage that you have to scroll through and everyone's there to sell. No one's there to buy. Life is horrible. You don't want that. You want the wonderful, amazing LinkedIn where people are happy to talk to you. You have a human-to-human connection with them, and they are actually eager to discuss how you can help them. To that end, please welcome Candyce Edelen. So great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this.
So Candyce, your company, the current company, is called Propel Growth, and you weren't always doing what you're doing today. So give us a little bit of professional history. What were some of the interesting steps along the way that brought you to the work that you're doing today?
All right. Well, I was born. No, I'm not. So I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. This is my fifth company. A couple of them were not real successful. A couple were okay. And so then the last two companies before Propel Growth, I was focused on the financial services industry, specifically on technology that enabled electronic trading. So it was a really tiny, tight niche, and I developed a bit of a name there. And so first company was pretty successful. We sold it. The second company, not so much, and I lost a bunch of money. But I started Propel Growth just serving the same industry that I'd already been in. And I had a name there. We'd been building something that was kind of category creating. And so we had a bit of a reputation. And that allowed me to publish content on third-party sites and on my own blog, although honestly, it was the third party that brought in a lot of inbound traffic. And then I got a ton of referrals. So for 10 years after I started Propel Growth, serving that same industry, doing really a lot of go-to-market strategy help for our clients in messaging and marketing, I didn't make an outbound sales call, David, for 10 years. Then I decided, in all that infinite wisdom that, gosh, I'm really sick of working in this space. I want to move on to something else. I've been in the space for 20 years. And so I decided to shift into commercial real estate technology that was kind of tangential, but new people. And then all those inbound leads just hit a wall. And I've got nothing. I've got no inbound. I've got no referrals. I don't know enough about the industry to have the credibility to publish on the trade pubs. And I cannot stand cold calling. I would rather reduce my lifestyle, get rid of the house, and go work at McDonald's than cold call all day. Total respect for the people who do that all day, but it is just not going to be me. So I had to figure out something, and I started investigating LinkedIn and went down the road of finding the automation vendors and putting pitch slapping at scale. And I like to lovingly call that annoyance at scale. How to annoy your prospects and alienate your entire market in 3 simple steps.
So good.
Oh, it just drives me nuts. But I did try it because that was the best practices out there. And so I spent months digging through all of the content that's out there about how to generate leads on LinkedIn and landed on an approach that really, really flies in the face of what most of the thought leaders out there are promoting. One is you don't scale it. You do things that are unscalable conversations, and you work one conversation at a time. And over time, running my consulting practice at the same time that I was doing this, I was putting in about an hour to an hour and a half a day, reaching out to a completely new market. In 6 months, even with that trial and error, I got 500 new connections in the commercial real estate space. 355 of them engaged in dialogue with me via DM. 355 replied to me. And 125 of them agreed to take an intro meeting with me. So I booked in 6 months, 125 meetings. Out of that, I was doing kind of two things with that. One is I was researching the market and trying to understand the issues in the market so that I could start publishing content. So some of those were just informational interviews, and then some of them were with the commercial real estate tech companies that were my actual prospects. So probably I would say out of that 125 calls, maybe a third of them were with prospects. And still out of that, I got 27 new opportunities and closed 438K in business. So this was like this huge aha moment for me. You can't scale that. It's one conversation at a time, but who needs to scale it? When I'm a two-person business, that was all added new business for us and a lot of new relationships. So people always like look at me and go, well, I can't scale that. And I'm like, well, you don't need to scale it. Stop talking about scale, start talking about relationships.
This is so fascinating. And I've got a zillion questions for you about all of this. So I think the reason people want to quote unquote scale it is because they are trying to cast as wide a net as possible.
Yep.
Those 500 people that you targeted, what were the criteria? What were the filters? What were you looking for? How could you make sure, because every one of these outreaches is customized, personalized, and humanized. Exactly. That's what I love about your approach. People don't want to do that if they're going to waste time with a whole bunch of the wrong people. How did you know, and how can we know that we're talking to at least a high probability, maybe not a definite, but a high probability prospect?
Okay, so there's two answers to that question. Answer one is frankly, the LinkedIn Sales Navigator search functionality is not very good when you're trying to look for people like this. And so I didn't use it as much as I used Google. And I went hunting for events that were focused on the commercial real estate space, especially where I'm looking for the commercial real estate tech providers. We're going to call that CRE tech for the rest of this conversation, or prop tech. Those guys were sponsoring those events. And the other guys, the thought leaders that I wanted to talk to, who were the investment managers investing in $85 million fund to buy a big building in New York, those guys were the speakers at those conferences. So I dug into the conferences, found the speakers, found the sponsors, and started reaching out to them intentionally one at a time, because now I'm finding the bigger names, finding the influencers in the market. And that helped me know that I was targeting the right people.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I mean, that's so much of that. It's easy, right? It's easy to think about that, but it's not so easy to implement. So I love the fact that we're looking outside of LinkedIn to find out who are the sponsors, who are the exhibitors, who are the advertisers in these big trade shows and these big conferences, knowing that kind of company, right, the CRE tech companies that want to get in front of the CRE buyers are the same people that you want as your clients.
Well, and there's another angle to that. So I'm having all those conversations so I can attract these guys to buy from me.
Yeah.
So I'm having conversations with 5 to 10 big investment managers. And I'm calling it the very senior level in these firms. They're fairly small firms, maybe it's 20, 30 people, but they've got big numbers behind them. And that's who these guys want.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, David, I just had a conversation with 10 of these big investment managers and got some information about their thoughts on data-driven decision-making in the tech space. I know you guys provide technology around that. Would you be interested in hearing what they had to say? I'd love to get your take on what I'm hearing.
So it's really a research-based ask. We're asking for, I can share some research with you, and I would like to include you as one of the leaders of this industry, include your input on this research that you're doing.
Exactly. And I was recording all those conversations. I was taking notes on all of those conversations because I also wanted to get out there and publish some thought leadership. And when you have 125 conversations with thought leaders in the industry, you suddenly have like a point of view that is new. And so I wrote a big article, and actually a publication paid me to buy this article. It was a 5,000 word treatise on why I thought we needed to bring more transparency to the commercial real estate space. So it's like over 6 months, I just like landed in this space with a bang. And now people were asking me to speak at conferences. Suddenly I'm a thought leader in the space. Not suddenly, it took 6 months and 125 conversations, and a very intentional strategy there. But you can see there was more to it than just pitch slapping people.
We interrupt this interview with an important announcement. If you're committed to better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees, get over to doitselling.com right now and grab a copy of my new book. That's the deal, kids. Grab a copy of the new book and then get all the bonuses, companion tools, trainings, and downloads at doitselling.com. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. Buy the book, get the bonuses. That's how it works. I'll see you over there. I know that one of the things that you teach, among many of the brilliant things that you teach, is extreme personalization and extreme humanization. And this whole concept of human to human, person to person, what you would do at a cocktail party, what you would do at a networking event. Talk to us about that, because I think that's a big aha for a lot of folks on LinkedIn.
Okay, so I want to go back for a second before we go there, because it's going to be an important criteria about that. How do you find the right people? A lot of people want to just find the people who are in market right now. But if you've got any addressable TAM, so in my case, it was the commercial real estate tech, the CRE tech companies. In any given TAM, which that one was intentionally very small, only about 3% of your target audience is currently looking to solve the problem you solve. So if you are trying to filter out the 97% and throw them away, what you're accomplishing is alienation at scale. So I don't do that. I take a human to human approach. I'm going to have a conversation with you. I'm going to build a relationship with you, whether you're in the market for what I sell right now or not. Because I know that if you know me, like me, and trust me, that you will send referrals to me, that when you are ready, I'm probably going to be top of mind for you, because I'm also publishing content. I'm sharing content on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get you to come and subscribe to my newsletter, where I'm sharing insights out of those calls every week. I'm having more calls. I'm sharing insights about that. And so I want to bring you into my world so that when you are ready, I'm the first person you call. Yeah. And I can't do that if I throw you away just because you're not looking right now.
Yeah.
So that's a really, really important aspect of this. And it's one of the reasons why people think about scale. Well, I have to have tens of thousands because only 3 or 4 are going to be looking. No, you need to actually nurture these people. And what's interesting is, David, you might not be looking now, but you probably know John, who is looking. And so if I have a conversation with you, I'm much more likely to find out about John.
Right. Absolutely. Talk to us a little bit, because, people look at LinkedIn as, it's the old cliche about, you have a blindfolded people and you cut them loose on an elephant, and one feels the leg and one feels the ear and one feels the trunk, and it's like, oh, it's squishy. Oh, it's soft. Oh, it's like a tree. So they say, okay, my profile is the key, and I got to SEO my profile. I will show up in search, and that's the magic. That's philosophy number 1. Philosophy number 2, I got to post on LinkedIn every day. I got to be a LinkedIn top voice. I got to be a LinkedIn influencer. I need to do videos and text, and I got to post. Strategy number 2. Strategy number 3, I got to DM 100 people a day. I got to get all up in their DMs. Hi, I see that you're doing this, that, and the other thing. Do you want to have a chat? DMs. No, wait a second. Strategy number 4, commenting. Find out what are the hot conversations, what are the hot topics. Comment, comment, comment. Show them how smart I am. Support them, like, share. It's like, oh my God, which one is it? What's the right magic combination? And how should we think about profile, posting content, DMs, and liking, sharing, and commenting?
You're not going to like my answer.
Oh boy.
It's all of the above. But that doesn't mean that you have to like spend your life on LinkedIn. Ain't nobody got time for that. I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. Nobody listening to this. If you have time for it, you probably need to find a new hobby. So you have to be strategic about it. So yes, the profile needs to be optimized. It needs to speak directly to your target audience.
Yeah.
You got to get your headline really locked in. You got to get your profile photo so that it's you, people can see you, you're looking at the camera, you're smiling. It doesn't have to be like some professional, $1,000 headshot, but it does need to actually be visible. I see people where it's like they're clear, back there and their head's like this little tiny piece of the photo, or they've clipped somebody out. They're like in a wedding group photo and everybody's got their arms around each other and they like try to crop themselves out. No, don't do that, or they're on a beach in a swimsuit. If you're selling swimsuit wear, maybe. Okay. But so profile needs to be optimized. It doesn't mean that you need to spend the next 5 months working on your profile, but you do need to tell a story so that when people come to your profile and check you out, because that's what they're going to do before they decide to take a meeting with you, they need to look at your profile and go, oh, I really want to meet with that David. He looks interesting. He looks like I could learn something from him. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, yes, you do need to be posting content on LinkedIn, and it needs to be quality content that shares a perspective and a point of view, not just reposting what your company posts. You got to bring a point of view and don't put links in it. No links trying to send people to your blog post. Share actual content on LinkedIn because people want to be there. They want to read what you have to say. Yeah. And bring in your own personality. My husband is my partner, and he's been for a long time struggling to figure out, like, how does he work with the Propel Growth voice and his own voice? And he's just recently landing on this brilliant approach that is completely different than mine. I'm much more dry. I'm warm. I'm human to human. I'm teaching. And Phil is a quirky guy. He's a musician. He's an artist. He's a creative. And he's finally bringing that into it. So he posted an image of Where's Waldo with his face as Waldo. And it was great. And it got like a ton of engagement. Yeah. And that was posted on a Friday afternoon, which, you would think that's not going to do well, but it did brilliantly because it brought his voice. And the more he's leaning into bringing his unique voice, the better it's doing. Yeah. And so we're having a lot of fun with that. And we're actually have a talk that we're doing now where we deliberately not bicker on stage, but we banter a little bit on stage just to kind of lean into the married aspect of things. And so what I say that to tell you that you want to bring your personality into it. It's not just a branded corporate speak thing. That doesn't mean that you have to like put a ton of effort into that, but don't let AI do your writing. You can let AI outline for you, but do your own writing and if you're better at speaking, do video, but get your voice out there. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be posting 30 times a day. It's like 2 to 3 times a week is enough. I received an inbound connection request from somebody who was trying to sell me writing services. I get this kind of stuff all the time. And first of all, if it's a pitch slap, I ignore it automatically. And yes, I said pitch slap. And you know intrinsically, everybody listening, exactly what I'm talking about. Right. So don't pitch slap them. Don't try to sell right away. And I'll come back to that in a second. But this person reached out to me and he had a pretty good intro message asking me a question. I don't remember what the question was, but he was kind of asking me about what we're doing around copywriting. Like, am I writing my own copy or something like that? And I went to look at his profile and I looked at his posts. and his posts were excellent. And that was why I accepted his connection request and engaged with him, because he was sharing quality content and his LinkedIn profile was pretty well aligned. We don't need his services right now, but if I ever do, he's more likely to be top of mind for me now because, and the content, he's a guy in, I think, Nigeria. And I would normally not think I'm going to go look for a copywriter in Nigeria, but the guy was really good. So that type of thing helps to build your credibility with the target audience. So when you do send that personalized connection request, not a pitch, they're more likely to respond to you. And then the third thing you asked about was the commenting strategy. On the connection request, I don't really recommend sending more than, if you have Sales Navigator, 5 to 8 personalized connection requests a day. It's hard to keep track of it if you go over that. And frankly, it's time consuming to really do the research to personalize. And so reduce your expectations of volume and increase your expectations of response rate. So I get a response from 71% of the people that I send out a connection request, not just an accept, but a reply.
Yeah.
And that's the numbers you should be looking for rather than trying to do a huge amount of volume, assuming a 5 or 10 or 20% acceptance rate.
Yeah.
So then the commenting strategy. Now, one of the best ways to get someone to engage with you is to drop a comment on their post first. So David, if you were posting something about your podcast and I either listen to the podcast or here's a pro tip, I would have AI look at a transcript of the podcast and summarize it for me, give me 2 or 3 takeaways and say, I noticed that this was spoken about and loved that point. I didn't have to actually spend the hour listening to the podcast.
Right.
And so then I can start a conversation with you. In the comments, I might comment on it saying, I liked this point. Or you might, if you're doing the post well, then the points are already in the post so that I can get that from there and comment and then send you a connection request saying, really appreciated your post, and just continuing the conversation in kind of 2 different places at the same time. It's much more likely to get that connection accepted.
So crazy question, because you said it's tough to keep track of all of the who's going on in Sales Navigator, who's going on in LinkedIn Messenger. Do you have some kind of CRM, or how do you keep track of your LinkedIn conversation pipeline?
It sucks. Honestly, it's very difficult. I've gotten pretty good at using the LinkedIn Messenger and keeping things marked unread, or moving them into other if I'm not going to focus on that conversation, so I can just focus on the conversations that are important.
Yeah.
There's a product out there called Condo that I've experimented with that can help with that. The problem is that most of these plugins are against LinkedIn's terms of service.
Right.
And so I am super, super nervous about recommending products because I don't want people to get their profiles restricted or banned. And it's really easy to get permanently banned from LinkedIn. And that would be career limiting. It could be career ending for some people to get banned from LinkedIn. And don't assume you can just go take a different alteration of your name and a different email address and get back in. LinkedIn's onto that and they won't let you back in.
Right.
So I'm pretty cautious. And unfortunately, it means that unless you are with a bigger company and you can afford the highest version of Sales Navigator, which will then integrate with Salesforce or Dynamics or HubSpot, then you're kind of out of luck and you're just going to have to be managing it.
Yes. Thank you. That's great. Well, it's not great that it sucks, but it's great that there are some workarounds. And again, if we keep it to 6 or 8 a day, honestly, you could use Excel. You could use Post-it notes. You could use index cards if you wanted to. I want to talk about, so what we haven't yet talked about is messaging prospects. And I'm going to throw myself under the bus because I have our message thread up on the screen here. So this is kind of fun. So my initial message to you in my connection request was, hi, Candyce, I came across your profile and noticed we had several mutual connections, which any second degree connections can have mutual connections. So that's a safe bet. I'd be happy to put my professional network on LinkedIn at your disposal. So that was designed to be a give, and looking forward to connecting. And then Candyce did something really smart that I want you to talk about here for a minute. You said, thanks for the invite to connect, and you accepted it. What led you to reach out to me? This is critical. Tell people why what led you to reach out to me is so important.
Okay. Step one, I did not accept your connection. I messaged you before accepting.
Oh, before accepting. Thank you.
I did, because your connection request, you're going to allow me to be really honest, right?
I'm here for the vigorous tooth cleaning.
All right. So that connection request sucked because because it's what the bot users and the pitch slappers are always saying. Like,
so
it's
totally generic. Totally generic.
It's totally generic. It's probably the most common personalized connection request I get. So I use that methodology both with those non-personalized communications and with the blank connection request. You can only do that in the browser version. You can't do it on mobile.
Yeah.
But in the browser version, if you click to see all of your invites, then there's a couple steps in there. And if you want to know how, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll give you a loom on how to do that.
Yeah.
But you want to see all, and then it gives you the option to message people before accepting. And that's been a game changer for me in keeping spam out of my inbox, because most of the people using automation, ironically, never even see that message.
Yeah.
It cracks me up. It's like, why would you be trying to use LinkedIn and reaching out and not monitoring your inbox?
Yeah.
So I would say that out of the blank invites that I get, probably about 70% never reply to me.
Yeah.
So I give them 3 weeks and then I ignore, and I get a little passive aggressive and click, I don't know this person, because that's my way to, because if you get enough of those, LinkedIn's going to restrict you.
Yes.
So I'm being mean.
Yes.
Okay, so I know that with the blank connection request, LinkedIn recently changed the rules on blank connection, on personalized connection requests. So if someone has a free account, they can only send 5 personalized connection requests a month.
Oh, wow.
So I'm way more open now to blank connection requests than I used to be, but messaging that way helps me keep the spam out, because they might reply with a pitch slap, or they might reply like you did. Now, the reason I say what led you to reach out to me, usually by the time you see that, you've probably forgotten, but it will send you to my profile to figure out, why did I reach out to her?
Right.
Answer my question. And so I get a profile view, which allows me to create some engagement, and you're much more likely to answer that question in a way that we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I want to have meaningful conversations with people on LinkedIn. And so you did. What was your response?
My response was, after looking at your profile, I thought you would be a good guest for my podcast, The Selling Show. I know it's a shocking concept here now that we're doing the show, which is a top 1% podcast, and wonder if it might make sense to have you on as a guest. Would you be open to a quick call to explore blah, 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 blah? And then some time went by, I guess 4 or 5 days, because you were traveling, I think. And then I realize now, after having studied the Candyce Edelen methodology, I probably should have started with my 3rd or 4th message, which was, hey, Candyce, I digitally stalked your website and saw your terrific podcast with Alejandro Sanoya. Would love to have you on my show. Here's the details. And I put the link into listen notes. I do have the benefit and the privilege of having a top 1% podcast. So even a stranger goes, oh, this guy's the real deal.
Yeah, that was brilliant doing that, because I did go click that, by the way.
Yes, yes. Well, because there's podcasts that are like, oh, I got 3 listeners plus my mom. And then there's real podcasts like this one. And so it's a little bit of credibility and so forth. But I do want to ask you this. So you and I, and this is like full transparency, right? Consultant, salesperson, what have you. Sometimes people connect with each other in total good faith, but they're each wondering, is this my prospect or am I her prospect? Right? And so it's like, is he going to sell me something, or is she going to sell me something? Or are we going to sell each other something, or we're not going to sell anything? So, and you mentioned this in one of your webinars, that when you're talking to like a sales executive and you reach out to someone who's a sales executive at a
Or a
company
business owner too.
or a business owner, first thing they're thinking is, ooh, inbound lead. This person's a prospect. How do we clarify that either we're not selling, we are selling, maybe want to explore, hey, this could be useful to you, like your copywriting example? How do we figure out who's selling what to who?
This is so crucial, because if they think you're a prospect and then you turn the tables and try to sell to them, you're going to piss them off. And even if they would be interested, you've disappointed them. And now the emotional balance is gone and you're not likely to get anywhere with them. So I call that putting ourselves in a trap. And you want to stay out of the traps. And it's really easy to get into that trap of, wow, David, you have a really interesting business. I'd like to hear more about it. You're going to immediately think I'm a lead. So what I have to do is find a topic that is relevant to what I do and relevant to your interests and strike up a conversation with that.
Right.
So let's go back to the CRE tech world. I knew that data-driven decision-making was a big trend in the CRE tech world, that it's an upcoming trend. I knew that there were some forces that were happening where hedge funds were coming into the commercial real estate world. I knew why that was happening because I was coming out of the financial industry. So I was able to really leverage that trend for probably 60, 70% of my invitations to connect, because I had nothing to sell on the data-driven decision-making, and I'm not their prospect because I'm not looking for an $85 million building or anything like that. So it could really be a dialogue of sharing ideas. Today, commercial real estate turned out to be not such a great space to be in 2020.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of weaving and figuring out our angles. And now I end up, I'm doing a lot of work with Microsoft partners in the ERP space. And so I have to be really careful because they see me as a business owner and that I might be a prospect for their ERP platform.
Right.
And so I will still stick with trends, or if they're posting, I might grab something off of one of their posts and ask a question about it. I had one guy that shared a testimonial from one of his clients, and the customer was like, they helped us solve problems on day one. And he also was talking about how he has these hashtags like clients not customers or something like that. And it's like he's sharing kind of a point of view and their brand. And so my connection request to him was, I saw that testimonial. That was really cool. Love your hashtag clients, not customers mantra. We share that philosophy. Curious about what was that first thing you solved for that customer.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of strategy behind that. One is I'm trying to not land myself in the trap of him thinking I'm a prospect.
Yeah.
Two is I want to give him a question that's easy to answer, because I assume that he's racing between meetings and he's going to answer here.
Right.
So he's typing with his thumbs. He's trying to go to the bathroom before his next meeting. And I want him to be able to answer me, because if he sets it aside, he's going to forget me and I'm going to get buried in his LinkedIn messages.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to let him answer me in 2 or 3 words, as opposed to a long. I mean, if he wants to answer me long, he can. But I try to ask a question that can be answered in 2 or 3 words to make it easy to get the conversation started.
Wait. We're not just going to listen to this episode. There are downloads, there are resources, there are links, there are bonuses waiting for you on this episode's page when you go over to doitmarketing.com/podcast. That's right, doitmarketing.com/podcast. Grab the notes right under this episode. See you over there. Now, I think where a lot of people get stuck is all of this so far. It sounds like a lot of work, but it sounds like good work and productive work. You just mentioned 97% not looking, 3% actively looking. We're in the direct messages. We're having some dialogue. Tell us about the pivot. Tell us about where we just sort of gently knock on the screen and go, hey, by the way, I don't know if this is a fit or if this is something that you might want to, look into, but we do this. Do you want some? And you do it much less freaked out and nervous and weird. Is there a pivot? Or do you just say, hey, listen, this is a mature adult person. They've seen my profile. We've had some dialogue back and forth. I've commented on their stuff. They know who I am. They know what I do. I don't need to do a direct pitch of any kind. Do we do soft pitch, no pitch, direct pitch, cards on the table pitch? What do we do?
None of the above.
None of the above. Awesome. Talk to us.
So what I do is I go for the meeting, and I don't go for the meeting so I can sell to you. I go for a meeting to talk about the topic that we've been having this dialogue about.
Again, the research-based outreach.
Right, exactly. So going back to the CRE tech space, it's like, I might ask you a question about, do you think that the market is moving toward a data-driven decision making, or do you think it's going to stay at a more intuitive level? And so that's an easy question for them to answer. And most of them was like, absolutely, it's going toward more data. And then I can say, it's interesting. I was talking to David the other day, and he mentioned XYZ. Do you agree? Again, yes, no answer. It's easy for him to answer. Usually I'll get a longer response to that one. And so then we go back and forth a little bit, maybe one more message. And it's like, David, I would be really interested in hearing more of your thoughts on this. And I've had like 4 other conversations in the last couple of weeks about it. I'd really like to share what I'm hearing, get your perspective, and get your opinion on what I'm hearing. Would you be interested in jumping on a call? It's so easy to transition that. So then I go into that call with a plan that, yes, I am going to share that insight. But before we get started, David, do you mind if I just, get a little bit more I'd love to hear a little bit more of your background and the current situation you're in and what kind of challenges you're dealing with. And that's the way that I transition that conversation to a sales call, because if my profile and my headline are super aligned around I'm working toward helping CRE tech companies market their businesses more effectively to data-driven decision makers, for example, then you already saw that in my headline. And so when I ask you what kind of challenges you're dealing with, your answer goes right into what I'm talking about. And then that becomes a little bit easier way for me to segue. Oh, you mentioned X. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? I'm curious. Yeah. We may never get to the sharing the insights thing, but it's all about you. It's all about me having a genuine, warm conversation with you. And you go away, like almost always the people that leave these conversations go, I really enjoyed this. I'd love to talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Do you offer a second follow-up call? Like, hey, by the way, I realized that we're short on time, Barbara. This was so great. By the way, if I could be of additional help to you, I'm happy to book a second chat. Do you want to talk again in the next week or two?
Yeah.
Or is that a little pushy?
What I would do, so there's 2 different paths these conversations usually go.
Yeah.
One is we end up just staying on topic, and I never managed to uncover a pain point. Okay. Now, that was definitely true on the investor side. I didn't, I had nothing really to serve them with.
Yeah.
But what I did find is that if I come with questions planned and they spend most of the time talking, they have a tendency to turn the tables on me in about the last 10 minutes of a 30-minute conversation and say, I've done all the talking. Tell me a little bit more about you and your business and how can I help you? So for those guys on the investment side, I would then turn it and say, well, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And I want to find these guys. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah.
I'll get referrals. Now, on the other side of it, when I'm talking to these guys, I might say, David, you mentioned that you're having trouble getting in the door with these bigger companies to talk about your data problem. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah.
And they'll give me a little bit more color. And a lot of times we'll run out of time. And so then I might come back to it at the end and say, you mentioned this. We might actually have some ideas that could help you. Would you be interested in scheduling another time to talk deeper in that?
Yeah, so good, so good. And again, you're building a relationship.
Yeah.
And that could end up as a client, that could end up as a referral partner, that could end up as a strategic introducer, that could end up as a conduit to publishing or a podcast guest opportunity or a speaking slot at a conference or all kinds of wonderful things.
Yeah, and it did all of those. And that's the thing that I think we have to have a bigger perspective than just, I'm going to put leads in the pipeline immediately.
Right.
We have to think bigger about it. And sometimes companies' metrics don't really lend themselves to that. So at an executive level, companies need to be thinking about relationships over annoyance at scale.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, Candyce, Edelen, I know our listeners are going to want to get connected and stay connected to more Propel Growth Brilliance. Where can we send people? What links should be in the show notes?
Well, first of all, come find me on LinkedIn and send me a connection request. If you are on a free one, I'm going to answer you saying what led you to connect, and please mention David's show because this has been fun. So I want to know that you heard it. Also, if you go to propelgrowth.com/podcast, you can download a couple of free checklists from me to just kind of double check as of whether your LinkedIn is optimized the way it needs to be. And we are releasing a quiz, and you can take that quiz. So it's going to score you based on 4 key areas: your profile and brand, your content and visibility, your networking and the relationships you're building, and then how you're using measurement and optimization to improve. So if you want to get your score on your LinkedIn strategy and some tips on how to improve, then go there and we'll get you a link to the quiz.
Candyce, Edelen, you are a rock star. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for all those value bombs that you just shared.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.